Welcome to Moonbeaming, a podcast about lunar living, magic, creativity, tarot, and more. I'm your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I'm so honored and excited to be here with you today. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Moonbeaming. We have such a special episode for you today. We are here with one of my favorite astrologers, favorite tarot readers, such an intelligent writer, author, philosopher, guide. We are here with the wonderful Jeff Hinshaw. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Jeff, you also have a podcast called Cosmic Cousins. I was hoping you could share a little bit about your work with some of the listeners.
So I have a podcast called Cosmic Cousins that comes out each new and full moon. And I offer a lot of insight weaving together both tarot and astrology to help us navigate the energies in our own personal life, but also collectively. And I work with people one-on-one. That's what I'm doing. Usually I do big group classes, but since the pandemic, I've switched more to one-on-one work. And so I'm working with people in deep dive mentorships right now and offering readings.
And I recently had a reading with Jeff that was phenomenal. I am a reader myself, and I am going to be honest, I'm quite picky in particular. And this reading was absolutely gorgeous. So I recommend, Jeff, for any of your astrological or tarot needs, definitely recommend. So we'll put that link in the show notes, click that link. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about your practice before we dive into our Solstice celebration. Yeah. You mentioned that you've changed your practice a bit. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about ways that your practice has grown or reoriented in the last year or so. Have there been any new insights? Has your North Star changed? Are you interested in different things? Has the personal work you've done been reflected in aspects of your career? I'd really be curious. And the reason why I'm asking you this, and I think this would be also something for the listeners to reflect upon, is how has all of this external change facilitated internal changes and spiritual changes in your life?
Yeah. I mean, we're all going through such a transformation right now. And the biggest thing for me is me taking a step back and listening more and observing more, taking workshops, educating myself. So I've taken workshops on restorative justice, trauma-informed work for wellness practitioners. My account on Instagram is private now, due to a lot of the scammer accounts that's been going on in the tarot and astrology community. So that's also shifting the way that I treat my work too. And I think this whole time period, I'm attributing it to the South Node being in Scorpio, maybe because I have a Scorpio midheaven, which is my career placement. And I'm becoming more aware of how sacred the work is that I offer in the world and how I need to protect that with privacy and also give myself the space to go through a transformation, because there's a lot that even just has been brought to my attention in the astrology community, that hearing and seeing and observing people using astrology as a vocabulary to support their own personal beliefs and worldviews that are not in alignment with mine. And that's been like a huge reckoning within myself. And so I really am reevaluating what my relationship is to astrology. I feel that more in the astrology community than I do in the tarot community. So I have found myself reconnecting with tarot in a more intimate way. And I was first a tarot practitioner before I was an astrologer. So I'm coming back to some of my roots there. And so I'm in the process of a transformation right now. And, you know, it's the way that our society is set up and capitalism is set up, we don't really necessarily give ourselves the space to do so. I mean, I still have bills to pay, rent to pay, those sort of things. So I can't completely check out. I'm still very engaged, but I'm doing it in a new way. And I'm being more intentional about who I engage with and how I'm putting my energy out into the world.
Thank you so much for that share. I relate in so many different ways. So thank you for that. And I'm sure listeners can relate as well. The big event that we are celebrating together is the summer solstice for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere. Jeff, how do you celebrate the solstice?
Yeah, on a very personal level. So I lead a 6-month journey through the major arcana of the tarot every year, from the winter solstice to the summer solstice. So literally as soon as the sun enters Cancer, it's like vacation mode for me. I usually take Cancer season off to be with myself, to spend time out at the river or the ocean, wherever I'm living. And so it is a time of just coming back home to myself and being outside because the days are longer, enjoying the sun. And really, I mean, summer season, we get to connect with the moon during Cancer season. We get to connect to the sun during Leo season. So we're working with the luminaries. So there is a very different energy of this time of year. So it usually does feel quite celebratory, with the tandem, a lot of emotional things going on and processing, because it's usually a time where I'm not holding space as much as a teacher and facilitator. So I get to go on a more internal journey. And I think that that is an invitation that Cancer might invite us into, is traversing our internal landscapes.
Yeah, for me, the summer solstice, for me, the equinoxes and the solstices are I really feel the energy. I feel the energetic shift, and they are my clock in a way. And the summer solstice is both this celebration for me, and there's also this bittersweetness, because as we like celebrate the light, we also understand that this peak of the light, this day, this longest day of the year, is the longest day of the year. And then slowly, the light begins to recede. And I also feel that tension a lot in Leo season, where you're really it almost feels like the Sunday scaries, like, oh, we have to go back to school. How are we going to make the most of it? And for me, the summer solstice, with the emphasis on the sun, the emphasis on what we're seeing, the emphasis of what is shown to us in our lives and what we might need to do about it. For me, it's also this little alarm clock of, oh, the Gregorian year is half over. What did I want to do? What were my winter solstice intentions? And how do I both celebrate what I've done? How do I compost what I don't want? And how can I make the promises I made to myself those long 6 months ago come to fruition? And what does that look like? And I was wondering if you had any rituals, or if you did anything personally, or if you had any suggestions for the listeners for, just some ways to tap into the solstice energy.
Yeah, I love this question. And I love that you're bringing up celebrating the sun. And it's making me think of the soul growth card. That's what I like to call the cards that are connected astrologically. So the Chariot is the soul growth card for Cancer. And I'm always intrigued by this one. It's fun to meditate on. And what I'm hearing from you of celebrating the sun this time of year is the Chariot is very moon-like. It has moon shoulder pads often, but is in a sky that's completely yellow. So there's a balance between the solar and lunar energy that we feel in the Chariot. And so for me, my rituals that I do during Cancer season, there's so many different ones, but the Chariot being one is actually like getting on a road trip and like going somewhere and moving the body and seeing what it feels like to visit the ocean. Actually going to see the ocean is a ritual that I would partake in. They feel lighter to me this time of year, but also an ancestral altar is something that I work with too. I've already built one this year. I'm a little early, which maybe it was in preparation for our talk because we're recording this a few weeks before the solstice. But that connection to ancestors can be a portal into some deeper healing, and it doesn't have to necessarily be blood related. I have a queer ancestor altar to those that maybe are in my family lineage that were not spoken of and their stories weren't shared, or just honoring people who are queer activists from the past that I really look up to is something that I like to incorporate this time of year. So there's an interesting balance of solar and lunar energy, even in what I'm sharing, of maybe going on adventure, going to see the ocean, outward, extroverted, but also a very internal experience of cultivating a sacred space within your home and bringing your home into some sort of balance and harmony too. So there's that dual component that I feel. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's pride, and there's really some correlation, I think, between the Cancerian archetype and making a home for yourself and being gay, being queer, being bisexual, and all the other identities that fall under that umbrella. And oftentimes, as folks, I'll just speak for myself, as someone who has distinctly felt othered in many ways because of my queer identity, making that home for myself, whether it's through queer ancestors, whether it's just in my body. And I think the Chariot and the Cancerian archetype is so much about the body, and it's so much about making a home and belonging to the self. And when I think of the Chariot, I often think of what we're taking with us, because you can't take too much you can't take too much with you when you're going on a new chapter and you're going on another journey, which I really see the solstice as correlating to this new. I think the equinoxes and the solstices can be these beautiful spiritual new chapters if we choose to work with that energy. And I also think about trauma. Gotta love being on my podcast. I could turn a celebration into talking about trauma, but I also think about trauma, and that trauma is held in the body, and Cancer corresponding with water is about cleansing and about clearing that energy so that we can heal, right?
Yeah. Well, celebrating our trauma too is something that I feel during Pride Month. It's not necessarily celebrating the trauma, but also being proud of what we've been through and persevered, not only in our lifetime, but also collectively. I feel that with the cardinal water. When we look at famous cardinal water people, Cancer people, the one that comes to mind that is a queer activist is Sylvia Rivera.
Yeah.
And I've meditated on Sylvia Rivera a lot as a Cancer, and there's that impetus to stand up for yourself and for your community and for those that you love. And so we might also be feeling that. And so I've cast a chart for us for the summer solstice. And so a ritual that you can also do is look to the 4 cardinal signs, which are the equinoxes and the solstices, and you can cast a chart for those times when the sun enters into that new quarter of the year. And really what we would do in this practice would be a divination tool that we could use to understand the next 3 months, Cancer, Leo, and Virgo season. And so even though these planets will maybe transit into new signs, what we're doing in this practice is honoring and acknowledging that the summer solstice has a certain resounding quality to it that, like, if you were to hit a bell. And so as the sun enters Cancer, wherever the planets are at that time, this could be a tool that you use. And I think this is a really great technique to use for anyone who might feel overwhelmed by astrology and how the planets are moving into different signs daily. You might find different aspects and things like that. And so just pulling up the summer solstice chart. And so for those of you who are on the West Coast, you'll have the same time as I'm going to share, but June 21st, 2022 at 2:14 a.m. And so you can translate to your time zone and see, but I am at the center of my practice here. So this chart is as if I were to walk outside at 2:14 a.m. on the solstice and look up in the sky. This is from my vantage point. And so since I'm the person sharing with you, this is the chart that we're using. So it's also stationed where I'm located in Portland, Oregon. So yeah, we always start with the sun. So we have the Cancer sun, which we've already gone into. And, but what I'm very interested about is that this particular Cancer season and summer time of year, we have Black Moon Lilith in Cancer. And we also have Ceres in Cancer too, or Ceres. So Black Moon Lilith is what I call the queer witch in our chart, and is a placement that comes with a big disclaimer. Black Moon Lilith covers many topics that are really actually heightened right now, including reproductive rights, miscarriage and abortion. Lilith rules over these facets of life, sexuality, physical assault, abuse, these sort of things that would come with a big disclaimer that are darker themes in our life. It's shadow work, healing trauma. All of this is Lilith, and she holds the grief of the entire planet, and particularly those who might relate to these topics or also might be outsiders to society. Right. So the sun being right next to Lilith, they're just 7 degrees apart from each other. This is a deep summer of doing deep inner work on a personal level. And so there could be a lot of healing around sexuality and a lot of healing around the darker themes of motherhood, Lilith. So we'll just pause there for a moment and take all of that in, because I think that it's important to give ourselves space to process all of that, because that right there is like a big invitation for us.
Yeah, things like looking at and attending to the mother wound, looking at and attending to matters also of creation, because we all don't give birth to other human beings, but we all certainly give birth to our own life. And, you know, whether you consider yourself a creative or not, if you consider yourself a creative, there can often be grief there, or there can be creative blocks, or there can be the tension between creation and capitalism, or selling parts of your soul or your spirit, time, energy, being seen, wanting to be accurately seen, I think could like come up here, wanting to be held, wanting to be acknowledged, wanting our needs to be respected, you know, I think could really be all topics for both illumination and also clarity, and also tending to, right? You got to figure out how to meet your own needs. And I think that one way to do that is with that Cancer sun, looking at that clearly with empathy, looking through the heart. Sight is not only about the eyes, it's about what perspective and what lens we are seeing, we are sensing whatever it is we're encountering. And I think running through, running some of these harder topics through the channels and perspectives and lenses of the heart, of the inner child, of the inner teenager, of the inner crone, of the inner elder, of our inner ancestors, would be a really beautiful way to start doing that kind of transformation. I was wondering if you had any insights on that, Jeff.
Yeah, well, when you're sharing all this so beautifully, like I just feel your channel opening up. And it just comes through so clearly. And so I started my eyes started gravitating towards other parts of the chart where I might even see some of what you're saying expressed in new ways. And so there is a great deal of energy in the 12th house for this summer. There's Vesta, Juno, and Neptune in Pisces, the moon, Jupiter, Chiron, Mars, and Eris in Aries. So we have a major stellium going on here in the 12th house. So when we look at this, there is this tremendous threshold of spirituality, Pisces, of great unknown and mystery, connection to our guides. And then as we go into Aries, this Aries energy, Jupiter entering Aries, is an invitation for us to come back into our sense of individuality and our identity. And so Jupiter just entered Aries recently. And so all summer Jupiter is in this fire sign. And with Jupiter in Aries, there is, Aries is such a personal placement. And for me as a member of the LGBTQ community, my Aries placements very much connect me to that identity and what I have persevered to do, the cardinal fire, to be the person that I am today. So when we're working with Aries energy, it can sometimes, in a shadow, it can feel like fight or flight. So there is this new beginning that's happening, taking place. The moon, Cancer's ruling planet, is in Aries on the summer solstice, conjunct Jupiter in Aries. And then the chart is in Aries rising too. So there is this tremendous new beginning, new chapter around who we are as individuals. And so collectively, that, Aries is a sign that's connected to war and aggression. And, that can be a very heightened energy. And when that is going on in the collective, it can activate our fight or flight. And so we are coming back into our bodies in a new way. And this is emphasized by a lot of the Taurian energy in the first house. So I think what is...
Wow.
Yeah, let's pause there then, because I could just keep going, but I'm curious if this is bringing up anything for you too.
Well, this first 12 interplay between that embodiment and the unknown, and how we have to feel, how do I say this? In my opinion, one prerequisite of healing or of magic or of a new chapter is feeling embodied and secure in the unknown. And I would really love to hear your personal take on the 12th house, especially when there are these very active, action-oriented, traditionally more externally focused signs and planets in the 12th house. I was wondering what your opinion on that or your interpretation was that was.
Yeah. Well, the 12th house is the house that ends our cycle. And so there is a great deal of being in a liminal space or being in the unknown. And so when we're working with this energy, I often think of the 12th house as a place of retreat, where we are, this could be a temple, this could be a hospital, somewhere where we go to heal, where some people may be passing away from this earthly plane, other people may be being reborn. So it's a place of death and rebirth. But it is also a place that we connect to collective consciousness. So having all this Aries energy in here is interesting because it in some ways is still saying, not quite yet, even though we feel this impulse to start anew. And so something I want to remind us is that Jupiter is in Aries this year, but will retrograde back into Pisces at the end of the year. And so there's still this kind of give and take between Pisces and Aries that we're feeling this year. And Pisces is spirit and Aries is being born as a baby. So it's like having one foot in a new beginning and one foot in the old way. And so for some of us, I would say if you're feeling like really starting something new, just be cautious with that. I think the North Node in Taurus will give us some guidance here too, that there's a lot of wounds that are being healed. Jupiter's conjunct Chiron. This is abandonment wounds. Chiron is conjunct Mars, and Mars is conjunct Eris, which is the warrior feminine or the feminist in our chart. So there's just Yeah, this threshold that we're moving through. And yeah.
A lot of things came up for me. Is it okay if I share them?
Yeah, I love creating that dialogue with you.
The first is when you said, okay, if we do want to start a new chapter, we do want to create new projects or make moves or whatever that might be. With all of this energy in the 12th, it also makes me think of looking first at the blocks or looking first at the shadow of the birthing of whatever it is you're birthing, and thinking about, okay, we know that anytime we step outside of our comfort zone, anytime we're in our growth zone, anytime we're being called forth via our intuition or our heart, there's going to be some aspect of that is going to be an opportunity to heal certain wounds, because those wounds are going to just be activated. That's just sort of part of it. I believe that's part of my personal spiritual beliefs. And so I almost wonder if it might behoove folks to really get clear on what they'd like to call in, and also see what could be activated and work on that internal process kind of ahead of time, as a way to proceed more clearly externally when it is time. And the other thing I thought of when you were talking about that Jupiter and Aries in the 12th is this prior interpretation of the Aries glyph as being the womb, and that there was this folktale where it correlated with a woman, I believe, interacting with a magical plant and then giving birth. And so at one time, Aries was the glyph of Mars. I'm so sorry, I'm mixing up my archetypes. Mars was the archetype in some regions, not of war, but of agriculture and of growth and of giving birth. Mm-hmm. And there was that, we see the Aries glyph as also being a little seed or being a little womb. And that over time, because humankind or because Greco-Roman peoples became more warlike, they needed a god of war. You know, they needed to pray to a deity, an archetype of war. And so I also think about reconfiguring or reimagining some of these archetypes as, you know, what if Mars was vitality? What if Mars was growth? You know, I know that Mars traditionally is thought to be of severing, but severing and cutting away and clearing away doesn't necessarily have to be destructive and violent either. So I also think about, you know, when we have these ideas of of clearing, it doesn't necessarily have to be as painful or as isolating. You know, maybe this is also a time to come together with other people or ask for more support as you clear.
Yeah, I love this upgrading the archetypes, but also going back more to the roots of the archetypes too, of what the potential that they have. And so one of the ways I connect to the Mars glyph is a circle, which is spirit or consciousness, and then the arrow that's coming out of it. And so there's this sprouting of something new that Mars brings forth. And so that could be the sprouting of a new idea, sprouting of a new chapter in your life. And it's all being amplified by Jupiter and the moon being here. It's bringing a focus to this part of our life. And it being in the 12th house, it feels deeply spiritual and connected to the unknown still. But it is an Aries rising chart, so there is that invitation to start anew, but it comes towards the end of Aries. The 28th degree of Aries is what the rising is cast here.
Right. So there's that like glimmer of moving towards Taurus. And what it also makes me think of as you speak is a concept I've been meditating on recently, which is I call when the universe says your move. And I think that sometimes for folks, especially for spiritual folks, especially for folks who are tuned in or who are intuitive or psychic, we really rely on our intuition, and we rely on things lining up, or synchronicities, or little nudges from the universe. And I think, or I'm only going to speak for myself. Okay. That's all I could do here, because I've been meditating on this concept, because sometimes the universe is like, hey, it's your move, babe. Like, I'm not going to give you a sign. This is time for you to deepen into your relationship with yourself, to take action on some of the things that you know inherently. And then I will, it's like, if you step towards God, then God will step towards you. If you step towards the thing which you are wanting, it will then step towards you. And I think that can sometimes be the greatest test, especially for those of us who have been, exposed to these new age thinkings of, well, it should be in flow, and it should be easy, and you need everything to line up, and you attract, you just vibrate, sometimes you need to like chariot it up, fill up your chariot with what you need, fill up your chariot with that fuel. That's very like, I feel Mars vibes, and move forward in the direction of your healing, in the direction of your growth, in the direction of your dreams. And that's what that kind of also made me think of when we're in the 12th. It is this real unknown. It maybe certain signs aren't clear. Maybe we aren't getting messages from our guides. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're not tuned in, or that you shouldn't move forward on something you want to do, but you might have to approach it in a different way.
Yeah. The image that came to mind when you were talking about putting the chariot in motion was a specific chariot card from the pagan Otherworld tarot. And it shows a figure who is on a chariot that is being led by two rams. So it has that particular chariot card has a very Aries-like quality to it, but one of the rams is black and one of them's white. So there's a duality there. And I'm feeling that here with all of this in Pisces, all the energy in Pisces and Aries in the 12th house. And so, yes, putting the chariot in motion, there is this impetus of like, Aries is telling us we've got to get up. We've got to be moving the body. And I think the energy in Taurus is also reiterating this, even if it's like right now for me, with Jupiter and Pisces, I did a lot of rest. Now it's time for me to move my body. And I'm not at the same level of fitness as I was before the pandemic. And so I have to be really gentle with myself, because when the sun entered Aries a few months ago, I was like signing up for all these fitness classes and I injured myself. So it stopped me. So now I'm back on a new routine where I'm walking on the treadmill for an hour every day on an uphill incline. And I'm using this as an example, as it's getting my heart rate moving, but it's more gentle for my nervous system, because a lot of us experienced a great deal of trauma. And a lot of us are still emotionally processing what's going on. And I think all of this in the 12th house is speaking to that emotional process. But we also need to get moving, Aries. So the like dark horse, white horse, that idea of holding the duality of movement. And so in whatever ways you can start to get the body moving, things flowing, I feel this with Aries often, that it's not just a charging full speed ahead. It's like the seed that's sprouting from the soil. It can sometimes be very gentle. And when like a child is born here, it's also, yes, they're coming out, they're screaming, they're crying, but also they need to be held and nurtured and cradled. And so being very gentle with the process, I think that with all of this Aries, Pisces energy in the 12th house, it does feel like, we could even be more accident prone if we're not being gentle with our nervous system and where we're at. And so if you see people out in the world feel like they have it all together, it's probably like not the case. Like we are all still healing, and the Chiron in Aries next to Jupiter is reminding us of that too, which is the wounded healer. So,
I love that you shared all of this. And I just wanted to share one more thing that this made me think of. And then I wanted to see if you had any more thoughts on this chart in this summer. It made me also think of a topic me and my friends have been talking about, which is, what are new definitions of success in climate crisis? What are new definitions of success in systemic decline. And with this Taurus energy and this Aries energy, I also think of our new definitions of success, which is one of the themes I channeled for this Lovers Year. Are they going to include learning how to grow your own food? Are they going to include picking local organizations to volunteer your time with? Can we turn our individual Aries goals with a more earthbound collective Taurus, and then that Jupiter, can we expand what our definitions of success are so that they are both and another theme of this year on Lovers energy, both nourishing to ourselves while also understanding that many of us have to make some radical changes in lifestyle or in our North Stars oriented North Node Taurus in order to move forward in a more sustainable way. So I think about that too. This could be a summer both of self-love, right? And also in self-healing and physical healing and trauma healing and celebration and inner child. And also, okay, well, where do I need to make some changes in my schedule and my lifestyle so that I am caring for more than just me, Cancer? All of these different archetypes are sort of whispering or gently guiding us to sort of look up, look around, to still stay in our center. We have to fill our own cup first. And also, can our long-term plans, can our visions of success also include healing for the earth, healing for marginalized identities, so on and so forth?
Yeah. I mean, this is a lot of what you're sharing is the invitation of what takes us into the next sign with Taurus. And so we had that huge conglomeration of planets in the 12th house. And the reason we launched in there was because the ruling planet, the moon, was there. So we connect with the Cancer sun, then we go to the Aries moon, hanging out with all that Pisces Aries action in the 12th. But then we go into the first house of the chart, and this is where we have Uranus, which you use the word radical already. That's one of Uranus's keywords. We have Uranus, the North Node, or the North Star, as you're calling it too, Pallas, and Venus, all in Taurus. And so I'm really intrigued by this for us. I pulled a card for us, and particularly tuning into your listeners of who are we this summer. And I was very struck that we received the Justice card. And it's from the Pagan Otherworld Tarot. And so in this depiction, justice is not standing still. Justice is actually stepping forward and taking action. And justice is surrounded by what appears to be like a briar bush. It has thorns all around it. And it seems like it's standing up for truth. So this was the card that we pulled. And when I looked at the chart, my eye went to two places. The first one was Pallas, conjunct the North Node. I often use justice as a symbol for Pallas. And so for those not familiar with Pallas, this is an asteroid. And Pallas is, I often equate to justice and the Queen of Swords, is the keeper of esoteric wisdom, is the keeper of what is often considered the lunar knowledge of the world, lunar wisdom, feminine wisdom, however you want to talk about it. But there's a sense with Pallas is that as the keeper of words and communications and thoughts and ideas that are not necessarily a part of our mass culture. There's a sense of being connected to the unseeable, to our intuition. And so Pallas is in Taurus. So this is also connected to the body and to the physical realm. So Pallas and Uranus being here with a North Node in Taurus, North Node is encouraging accelerated growth with Taurus over this year. And so this is a very gentle way of working with this chart, is bringing your focus towards the North Node. And so the North Node's in the first house of self, in the sign of Taurus, which is connected to the body. It's connected to nature. And so Pallas has this piercing quality, piercing truth, wants to share information that I always say Pallas pierces the veil of illusion. And then Uranus, the radical innovator. So a way of honoring this transit would be to engage in earth-based rituals that connect you more deeply to your intuition, Pallas, so that you're communicating about your body, so that you are engaging with intentional body-based rituals. For instance, I've noticed Pallas being very strong in the sign of Taurus and Virgo as piercings and tattoos. So there's actually kind of a ritual of being in the body and doing something intentional that empowers you. And so how might you embody the future that you want to see through a deeper connection to your ritual that is also earth-based? And so I like that you're also talking about, growing your own food too, because Pallas has the ability to understand patterns and symbols and archetypes. Mm-hmm. When we bring that into Taurus, it's like Pallas gives a bird's eye view to the plot of land that we're growing. And so it's almost like feeling like a crop circle or something, like symbols and earth.
Love that. Ooh, I'm getting so excited. Yeah. Like growing intentional gardens or putting your houseplants in configurations that are intuitively led, letting them speak to you, utilizing the earth as a divination device, thinking about ecosystems, tuning into the earth more and letting that give you more insight about the ecosystems you're building in your lives. All of this is just so beautiful and wonderful. Jeff, you know that I could talk to you for 9 million years. You're one of my favorite people. I was wondering if you had any other insights that you wanted to share for our listeners, this was basically like an encyclopedia workshop on astrology. And I think listeners have a lot of insight and a lot of inspiration, I'm sure. But do you have any other shares that you feel called to share today?
Yeah, I think just around what we were talking about in Taurus, that we have the power and the intuition and the ability to use the resources around us that we have to heal. So it's being creative with what's available to you. I won't speak for everyone, but a lot of us take the elements for granted on a day-to-day basis. And so I am sensing with this chart a reconnection to the elements and to not lose faith. That can slow down the healing process. And so if you find yourself feeling like you're getting in a state of flight or fight, to reconnect to the things that you can hold that are tangible, the physical world. And so, if you're able to work with a somatic therapist to move trauma out of the body, if you're able to go on walks in nature, these are this is all so practical in many ways. It's Taurus. But like you were saying, it's for long-term sustainability. And so we're shifting here, and we might feel it in the collective, and just, financial markets changing, the environment around us changing. That's also feels like a signature of Uranus, Pallas, and North Node and Taurus. And so the importance to ground and to be in the body and to connect to the earth in the ways that you can will go a tremendous way in supporting your growth and evolution as we move through this summer.
So much of witchcraft are the basics. It's meditation, it's energetic cleansing, it's protection, it's grounding, it's appreciating and having gratitude for the earth and the elements. It's honoring nature. It's honoring who you are. It's honoring the sacredness of each individual. And with all that energy in the 12th and the 1st, I'm also wondering if it's this nudge to, if those of us have kind of strayed in all the trauma, in all the distraction that has happened this year, if it's this call back to ground into a pragmatic habitual daily spiritual practice to become more in tuned and as you've said, to become more embodied and bring in more healing and reconnect to intuition and reconnect to what is most important. And I'm so grateful for you. You are just such a healing, kind, brilliant, compassionate person. And I am so grateful that you said yes to today and all of the wonderful insights that you brought us. And I was hoping if you could share how folks could work with you, where people can find you, if there's anything coming up that you're teaching, or if you have any offerings currently that folks can interact with this summer to help them with their own process. I know that folks want to know more.
Yeah, I have a few spots open for one-on-one mentorships for this summer that it would be an honor to connect with anyone who's feeling called to go deeper into their practice. And I'll help you navigate your moments of transformation and emotional healing, spiritual healing, using tarot and astrology as a tool. And I do have some group classes in the works, but I have not formulated that quite yet. So it will be out by the summer solstice. So I should have that stuff posted by then.
Don't you have a downloadable workshop on Black Moon Lilith? Am I making this up?
I have taken it down off the website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I had workshop downloads available. I recorded that 2 years ago. So it just felt outdated. All the information's changing. And so I want to make sure that it's in alignment with what I'm learning. And so, yeah, but I will likely release another workshop on Black Moon Lilith.
And there's your podcast that folks can subscribe to. And I'm sure you have a newsletter. So we're going to put all those links in the show notes. Thank you so much.
And also on Instagram too, I'm private. So if you send me a request and I don't approve it, you can always just send me an email or something. I would still love to connect with you on that app. I'm just using it a little bit more mindfully at this time. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. And it's been an honor to connect with you in this way.
Thank you so much. Until soon. Moon Beaming is brought to you by The Moon Studio. It is created and hosted by me, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. It is edited by Rose Blakelock with a lot of additional help from Hazel Frew. It is supported by our beautiful patrons, which you can join over at patreon.com, The Moon Studio. If you would like to further support the podcast, you can sign up for a sponsorship. You can rate and review it or share it with your friends or on your social media. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much.